Live.
Right.
All right. Here we go. Life, love, and the grind. Back at it again. A little bit different this week because I'm without my right-hand man and, the brains behind everything, Sarah Sadat. Outside of Raza being a co-host, he has to do his, husband duties and make sure he takes care of the prize, which is Sarah, keeping us together. So shout out to, Sarah and Raza. Make sure he's spoiling you. So I got Jeff Jacobson and his campaign manager, Samantha Wilson, the lawyer and the renegade, as it says below.
How you doing, Sean?
So what's going on?
And a shout out to Sarah and Raza.
Yeah.
Miss you.
Yeah.
Wish you were here.
Yeah, exactly. So so what's going on? Let's talk about how you two guys got together. So how did you kind of get in with Jeff's campaign?
Sure. So my name's Samantha Wilson. I'm a campaign advisor in DuPage County, and I was actually working on Judge Linda Davenport's campaign in 2018. She ran for judge successfully, and Jeff was her counterpart in that campaign. He also ran for judge in 2018, and Linda's offices were actually in Jeff's law offices. So her campaign offices were in Jeff's law offices, and Jeff just became a buddy. Mm-hmm. And we talked a lot during that campaign. I helped him out as well as Daniel Hebriard, especially after the vote. We spent 2 weeks at Jeff's offices just trying to get those last provisional ballots in. And he was the first person I reached out to this campaign season and said, "Hello, are we doing this? It's May."
Well, you have experience with, Judge Linda Davenport and Dan Markwell, kind of one of the first COD trustees. So yeah, it's good. You got some good experience.
And I needed to win, so when she reached out to me, I didn't hesitate.
Because that was a tough race. You lost by 380 votes.
388 votes out of 360,000 votes.
Yeah,
so
yeah. That's the importance of voting. I mean, every vote counts.
Yeah, I think Cynthia Borbas laid it down where if half a person voted in every precinct, Jeff would have won. Mm-hmm. Or something like that, a quarter of a person voted in every precinct.
I figured if I talked to 40 more homes, it would have made the difference. But clearly having a campaign manager who knows what she's doing is a huge difference.
So what are you guys doing differently now? So what's kind of some of the strategy or not to give too much away? But.
No, sure. We started really, really early in the campaign season. Like I said, we started we were talking in May, and on June 1st, we started. We got our literature together, what we wanted to say, Jeff's stump speeches, figured out what position he was going to. There's 4 different judicial positions open this election cycle. So it only started off with 1 or 2 back in June, and then eventually we learned there was going to be 4 open. So and we made sure to have our literature ready to go, and we started knocking doors as soon as we possibly could. We have a very detailed precinct breakdown of all of DuPage County. We know where we're walking. We've got money into Facebook advertising already, and making sure that Jeff is everywhere that he needs to be and more. So
now you're on Life, Love, and the Grind.
Yeah, well, that was huge. This is going to make a big difference in the campaign.
Exactly.
It's and I mean, we're just doing a lot more. Samantha is really driving this campaign. It's
so something interesting. So you ran back in 2002.
Yes.
So what was it like 18 years ago? Well, what's the landscape change from 2002 to 2020?
Well, I mean, everything's changed from local to federal, nationwide. So there weren't many Democrats involved in 2002. And I'll lead to an interesting story that I don't think you know about. So when I ran, there wasn't a lot of organization going door to door, meeting people. The yard signs, the lit wasn't that big of a deal. There was the one office in DuPage, which is where it still is in 2002. And there weren't a lot of members. I think there were a lot of Democrats. There just wasn't a lot of organization.
Maybe not a lot of openly out, Democrats. Back then everyone was kind of keeping it private.
Right. And it was just a completely different time. You did the parades. I remember at one parade, one of the MCs said, because there was like 20 of us, said, "Oh, here's all the Democrats in DuPage. But I got approximately 40.
Burn.
Right. Well, and I was very upset because they were able to say that, and that basically was a shout out to all the people at that parade that don't vote Democrats because there isn't many. But it was, I got a lot of votes. I got about 45% of the votes back then when it was really hard to get out to meet people. And I met a lot of people and did a lot of work and was in a lot of parades. So it was an interesting time. I had ended up doing really well in DuPage back then, and when, I don't know if you're familiar with this person, Barack Obama was running for state, he had come to meet me and asked me how I managed to do well in DuPage. Of course, I didn't have any intellectual answers for him. But got to meet him and talk with him for about 15, 20 minutes about campaigning and stuff.
See, if I were you, I would be telling everyone that you gave him the strategy to win.
I was
president.
The person. No.
You were the driving force behind the strategy.
It's a possibility. You'll have to ask him.
Yeah.
I just gave him the advice I had.
Okay.
But it was a good time.
So you've been around. You've been in the game for a long time.
Yeah, and actually the claim to fame back then is that I got 3 more votes than Rod Blagojevich got in DuPage. So not as many as Jesse White. He does an incredible job in DuPage.
He's untouchable.
Seriously.
Everywhere he's untouchable.
I just love that man.
Yeah.
For good reason.
I vote for him.
Yeah. So how long you been involved now, Samantha?
I've been involved in DuPage since 2015, but I am a cook into DuPage traveler. I started in North Lake, Illinois, which is right over the border of DuPage County. It's right next to Elmhurst. And I just grew up in a working class family, and there were a lot of passion projects that I had when I was younger, because right when I was in 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade, that was the first term of George W. And I got very involved in high school. I was very anti-Iraq war, anti-Afghanistan, going into Afghanistan, and we're still there, 19 years later, going on now into Afghanistan, 17 years in Iraq. So that's really when I started to get involved. And into college, I was preaching about universal health care on my Christian campus where I went to college. I went to Concordia University, I believe they're called now. And we had speech classes, and they asked me to do a speech, and I sat up there and said, universal health care. And they all looked at me like, you're a strange woman. And I got involved again in 2015, mostly because of the Bernie Sanders campaign. And stuck with it from there. I got started College Democrats, tried to restart it again at College of DuPage. It's, hanging out there. There's still some politically active groups that are not necessarily College Democrats at DuPage, but definitely a lot of LGBTQ organizations, feminist organizations, stuff like that. And I was recently elected this summer as vice chair of York Township Democratic Organization, which I've been heavily involved with for the past 3 years now. And my chair, Tina Tyson-Dunn, and I are just doing our best to do everything we can, get out in the community, have just fun fundraisers, and, get our candidates elected and get our people out to vote.
So do you feel like there's younger people getting involved? And even with you too, Jeff, like obviously from 2002, do you see there's more younger people, or is it kind of still?
So in the last cycle, I saw a lot of young people, high school kids. I did an event at Downers Grove North having to do with the violence, and it was just amazing, the number of young people. I think they're out voting. They're still busy with school and other activities, but I think they know what's going on in politics a lot more than when I was in high school.
Especially these Generation Z kids, these 17 and younger. They are so tuned in on a level so my generation started off with Columbine, and then we kind of rolled into all this school shooting and climate change and all this stuff. So we, we were getting used to that, and it wasn't as frequent as it is now. Now these kids that are in high school, middle school now, shootings are a part of everyday life. The world is being destroyed. Their college tuition is so high. This current administration is rolling back a lot of LGBTQ rights and, union rights, all this stuff like that. And they're very tuned in, and they're going to make sure that they are heard, because I feel like they see the mistakes of my generation where we didn't speak out, and we can still speak out, millennials, 23 to 30 age gap now.
I think we're the biggest age group on the planet.
Yeah.
Millennials are the largest.
And if we went out and voted, you don't have to do anything else, just register to vote, make sure you research your candidates and vote. We're not asking you to do that much. You have to vote twice a year, with the municipal elections.
What do you think makes the engagement though? Do you think it's social media? Do you think it's just so much information now that people are seeing it more, so that's how they're so tuned in? Or do you think that it's just such a social awareness where people are really like, you know what, there's got to be a change?
Yes, I think both. I honestly think the internet is, it's a gift and a curse. There's a lot of, but my generation and the younger kids especially know how to sort that out, what's real and what's not. They know how to verify if an article is a news site and stuff like that. And I actually think that the apps, especially TikTok, especially LGBTQ plus people on TikTok and feminists getting their message out to other fellow, Gen Z. They might be using unconventional means, but they're getting their message directly into the other people's brains. Look at, there's a 17-year-old that feels that passionately. I'm, 15 too. I can relate to you, instead of somebody talking down at them, which I feel like there's a lot of problems with that.
Technology's changed. So when I was in school.
You know about TikTok? Because I don't even know about TikTok.
I do know about TikTok. Haven't used it. But it's, when I was in elementary school, junior high, and high school, you had the news at 10 o'clock at night. You usually didn't stay up. So unless it was a major event like the first man landing on the moon, where the teacher would bring the TV into the classroom and you'd watch it, you didn't really know what was going on. You had the newspaper that came out every day. Probably didn't read it, most of the kids. But nowadays, during school, they can be on their phone. They can see what's going on.
Twitter updates them every
They'll
day.
share it to friends, and so they can find what they like and follow that, and then their friends are keeping them up to date. I'm shocked at how much, and I shouldn't be, my kids know about world events. They know about the coronavirus that's going on. And back when I was in school, I'd have to wait till the 10 o'clock news, and then you had 30 minutes of what they thought was important during those 30 minutes.
Everyone knew about Iran like that. It became huge on the social media, So
I don't remember being that political, being that young, but yeah, I have a 13-year-old nephew, and it's like he knows about Donald Trump and their views, and they're asked, Republican or Democrat. I grew up in a union family, so I kind of knew where we stood on everything, but I don't remember it being so much. And I think, social media has just brought so much of it to light.
Right.
And you talk about gun violence. just last night there was
shooting in Lyle.
There was a triple murder right down the street.
I think only one murdered, and then there were 3 shot.
Oh, okay. Well, then the woman turned it on herself.
Oh,
so she shot shot a man, or two men, and then she killed herself.
That's so unfortunate.
Yeah, and that's right down the street now.
And the kids hear about that, and it's and I think though that's changing with being on the news. I used to worry when my kids were in school that once they got out of school, I didn't have to worry that much about violence. People, and my son's going to be a math teacher in a high school now. It's a forever worry that it's just become, I think, a lot more violent.
And that it speaks to a lot of the mental health issues too that these kids are having, and that's, you'll see on TikTok too. I know I keep bringing up TikTok, but it's the easiest way to look into what they're doing. It really is. And they're not like emo kid depressed like my generation was with the black hair. Hi, me. But they are genuinely sad. Every day they wake up and they are, they make jokes about how sad they are and stuff like that. They see the world for what it is, very much so than any other generation, I think, at their age has. And they're like, what's the point sometimes? So it's either get active or what are you going to do? Let the world get set on fire like Australia.
Well, it's good to see passion from, and I think your generation had the same kind of passion with the Vietnam War and everything, kind of like,
Well, we have the
I
passion
don't mean
of
to age you.
right.
I don't know.
The issues that
But there was passion.
going on.
Yeah.
I mean, I think every generation is very concerned about what's going on currently for them. They're very involved. I mean, you look at all the young people that voted in the last election. I don't know if we broke records, but there were a lot of people that had come out that had never voted before.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's important to get young people involved, get them involved, get them voting. We talked about the importance of young people going to work and in unions. Before I get to you, I do want to talk about how you were a steward at AFSCME.
okay.
I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors at Breaker Press, Rich Lewandowski, and all the people down at Breaker Press. It's Chicagoland's top union printer. They, from the courthouse to the White House, anything from top to bottom. He helped me with my campaign in Lisle Township trustee. He helped Sarah Sadat in her campaign, along with hundreds of others. So Rich Lewandowski, if you could put the name and number, my Vanna White over there, Rich at breakerpress.com, or visit www.breakerpress.com. Rich Lewandowski is going to be the one you're going to want to go to with all that union printing needs. So tell us a little bit about how you went from a former steward of AFSCME, now attorney, and now running for judge and all those things.
So, well, ask me. I was a member when I worked in the appeals division as an administrative law judge, but I became more active. I felt that the union members needed more representation. So I actually became a steward, and I was representing union members on their grievances. And I can boast that every one of my union members, none of them were disciplined or terminated or severed, because I think they needed good representation. And so I enjoyed that. And you don't get paid to be a steward. It's, you do it voluntarily because you care about
you care about the union movement,
Right.
So how is it that, what's the benefits of being, a pro-union guy? What could a judge, how does that translate from judges to unions or unions to judges? Is there kind of a correlation there? Is there something you could do to help unions? Is it important to have union-friendly judges, or is it kind of a separate issue?
So no judge should ever rule based on, whether they're pro or anti-union. You need to listen to the facts, apply the law to those facts, and make your decision. So I would say that clearly I would never, take that union consideration in ruling on any case. While, I love being a union member, that wouldn't be applicable to my work on the bench.
Yeah. And we had talked before, myself and Raza, we had Azam. It's kind of funny that judges are Democrat or Republican.
Yeah.
Shouldn't it be a fair of the land? I mean, why would you line up on a certain way?
Don't get me wrong, but I think Illinois is one of 11 states that still makes judgeship partisan, or running for judge partisan. But
it's not exactly that way. So there's, I'll just say there's 40 some judges in DuPage. 15 of them are elected. The remaining judges are appointed by a majority of those 15 circuit judges. So you have approximately 30 judges that the voters have no opinion on. They have no say whatsoever in those judges. It's, if you have a majority, it would be 8 of those circuit judges make all the decisions on the rest of the judges throughout DuPage. And I don't know that works well. I know that other people complain about, throughout the nation, when it's appointed positions, you get who's ever, favorite, friends of, those kind of things.
Well, we talked about that too, like just this appointment culture of, and we see it from the top to the bottom of how you just get in power and then you can appoint all these people. I mean, that's kind of a dangerous position of power.
Right. And we're going out and getting the message. There's 4 seats open. So the voters will be able to decide for the first time on 4 judges that will make a difference in DuPage.
So you say first time,
There's never been, as far as I know, 4 seats available.
Yeah.
In one election cycle.
Right.
Yeah, okay. That's good to know.
Right. And I did just a little information for the voters. So they vote for one candidate for that seat. So even though there's 4 seats, it's not the top 4 vote getters of the the 6 Democrats that are running. So they would vote for me for the Anderson seat, and, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Okay. So moving forward, Samantha, what do you think? How are we going to get young people more engaged? We talked a little bit about COD, and how do we translate all this passion into voting and getting, and not only just voting, but running for office and winning. And
I think a lot of it has to do with getting the right people to go out and do outreach for the youth. Honestly, when you're working with youth, you want to send youth. You want to, in a week or so, I'm going to College of DuPage to speak to a couple of political science classes. And I would even say, at being 31 years old, like I'm just at the cusp where they'll take me seriously and they won't feel like I'm talking down to them. You know what I mean? So that's a major issue, is just being able to communicate, to understand what they do without being like, hey kids, are you on TikTok? You know, you have to be able to understand what they're going through, what the problems are, especially with, so I brought a couple statistics with me just for people that, think that millennials and Generation Z, the issues we're going through are not that bad. So inflation has gone up 17.2% since 2010, but minimum wage remains the same. And in 1988, the cost of tuition in 2020 dollars for U of I was $4,112. In 2020, the actual price of tuition for U of I is $17,000. So, these kids are going into their college education they're leaving their college education with huge amounts of debt. They can't save money for a home. They can't, they're investing their time, and sometimes they can't even find a job right out of school because they don't have work experience, So, and I believe that college is, too many people are going to college for the wrong reasons as well, but that's another issue. And I think that just getting your message down before you go in and talk to the youth, understanding where they're coming from, and making sure that youth is speaking to youth is the best way to go about things, and helping them get involved at the base level. I'm sure that, they don't teach civics and stuff anymore in high school. I don't even think I got civics in high school, so there's a lot of kids that just don't know where to begin, don't know how to register to vote, don't understand what township they're in or what county they're in or whatever else, it's just that basic information is just gone. So you have to work to fill that in for them.
Although I see kids getting involved more and more in the last few years,
definitely.
And the gun violence is impacting them, and they now understand that their vote matters, and the climate change, so we're seeing a lot of people much younger than me that are involved because now they're connecting, and I think that might be with the technology. They're seeing how they can go on a video and it goes throughout the world, and the President of the United States sees that video, and so they can appreciate now how they have their own campaign and are working. And I think you're going to see a lot of these youth running for office someday because, there's issues that impact them, and they have a forum now to.
That's the other thing too, is, Mitch McConnell's not going to be around forever, and we need somebody to replace him at some point. And it's the same for any, think of any, older white man in politics. They're going to be gone one day, and we need somebody with our, speaking as a millennial, our interests at heart, and who will vote properly and won't screw up the economy for the next generation or the next one.
Right. I mean, they're just starting to realize the power they have. And that, at 17 now, you can vote in a primary. So,
if you're going to be 18 for the election.
Right. So you have a lot of power. And I think they're starting to realize that because, years ago, unless it was on the 10 o'clock news, no one knew about it. And now you have, people that are getting involved, creating their own organizations and moving things and making changes. And I'd like to think all the politicians are listening.
Well, I think they kind of have to now. If
Yeah.
they don't see the writing on the wall that changes are coming, I mean, they're crazy because it is a wave of people that are fed up,
Oh, yeah.
and everything's changing. But, so speaking of the Democratic Party, I mean, how do you, like you say, you got to connect to younger people, but how are you going to connect to younger people when you're doing the same old, township meetings and the same old stuff? I mean, I always say, like, if you want to get younger people, you have to go do what younger people do and have, like, I go and speak to all the union people. I mean, that's what I can do. I can connect with younger union people. I'm not going to go and talk to a room full of, LGBTQ or feminists. I mean, you have to find that niche and find the right people to go and hammer it home and then try to organize these people to kind of come into the Democratic Party or come into,
So that's a huge problem that we're running into more than ever before is kids these days, every minute of their life is booked. They're at school, they're in an activity afterwards. They got to wake up early and do an activity, this, that, the other thing, because they're all trying to get all their, credits and activities in before college starts. And then once they're in college, pretty much, every moment of their life is booked or whatever.
But is it though? Because I feel like in a generation where everybody's playing Fortnite and sitting on watching Netflix, I don't know if it is that.
It depends what they do. I mean, for those that are passionate about politics, it will be booked with politics. There was one high school student that was going around the townships starting up an organization. So he was busy, but I don't know if you remember seeing him. I think he was from Wheeling High School.
Okay.
And he's trying to start up an organization. It did start up. He's got a lot of students. So I agree with you. I mean, a lot of kids are addicted to video games, but if they're passionate about politics.
Especially as like millennials. I mean, we're labeled as like the laziest generation of all, which again, I don't agree.
Yeah, I don't
but
either.
I surround myself with people that are
not
like
labeling
actively.
you guys as that.
But you know what I mean? Like I surround myself with people that are actively doing stuff. But are there people that are not doing anything? 100%.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they're stuck on video games and you know what I mean? So it is, that's why with like the unions, it's harder to get people in the unions because they're like afraid of that work and kind of work ethic.
Yeah. I think the other thing too is I think this generation understands their privileges a lot more too. They understand that if they're born into a white family living on the upside of Chicago or whatever, the north side, I don't know where rich people live.
The north side.
Yeah, they have certain advantages than others do and stuff like that. But it's really hard to get into the mindset and you can't make them do anything. That's the hardest part of it is you can't make anyone do anything, and you have to present your case in the best way possible and ask them, what would you want to do to get involved? What do you want to do? Don't set things up for them without their input and stuff like that. So if you want to get involved, what can you do? We might not be able to get together all the time, at one monthly meeting or whatever, like normal township meetings and et cetera do, but we might be able to remotely have a Skype session or something, or figure out, how we can do separate things on our own, but get it all together at a certain date. It's just working around their schedule, making sure that the ones that are getting involved are being thanked for their involvement. And if they differ from you politically, but are still in the same party, they are still your ally. Don't treat them like they don't belong there, or if, they're a difference if you're not for universal health care and they are, you still want people to have health care in the Democratic Party, don't you?
So you're saying like people in the same party.
Yeah, exactly.
It's also how we communicate with them. If we're still placing ads in newspapers and that's our only media for getting more members, we're not going to attract many people.
No.
We're not going to attract young people. Can't tell you the last time I read a newspaper. It's all online.
I still read a newspaper every once in a while.
And a paper, the physical?
Yeah, sometimes I go into Breakfast Place, grab one. That's how I saw Don Harmon, State Senate.
And I like
I saw it on Twitter.
I like to be able to look at it on my phone because then I can click on something and it links you to somewhere else. But I think it's, how we go after the younger people.
Yeah.
We need to know their media. Like Samantha said.
Yeah,
if
memes.
you want.
Let's get it with memes. Let's start looking at what they think is funny on the internet and translating it into, oh, you think this is funny? Then, maybe it'll grab your attention somehow, but we can't do it from a, mom's perspective. That's what I call it, a mom's perspective.
Yeah.
You can't be mom.
I'm going to do one better. Tune into Life, Love, and the Grind every Saturday, 1 to 2 p.m. Shout out to Raza and Sarah. I know you guys are watching somewhere.
Yes.
So, no, but
Which is an excellent source. To
but
keep
I
up to
agree.
date.
You have to really connect to the people to kind of get them to wanna to get. You gotta show a little excitement, right? You gotta show a little passion and feel like they have a voice. You know, that's a big thing in the Democratic Party too. Is that you are talked down to, you are looked at as lower. I have differing beliefs on it. As a union guy, you have a 4-year apprenticeship. And I'm like, hey, you're an apprentice. You're nothing for 4 years. It's, it is what it is. And then you work your way up.
Yeah, and I actually don't agree with that. So our campaign wants younger people helping out because they bring a refreshing view to things. I mean, I think it's helpful. So when we go out, like Samantha going to the College of DuPage and high school students, we want them to join in. And it also gets them engaged. They may not know what to do.
It makes it less scary for them.
And you empower them.
Yeah.
And they can learn things, and who knows where they're going to go from that. I mean, at 15 years old, someone came into my high school and said, do you want to help stuff envelopes to a bunch of us? And I said, sure, I'll try that. And, did some campaigning stuff and phone calls and kept doing more and more. So, I think it depends. I mean, we're very open and really want the younger generation involved. We want their point of view.
Yeah. Which I don't know if everyone in the Democratic Party is like that. And sadly, look at our Democratic choices. They're, they're like 80-year-old white
They're
men.
either evil or centrist. You know, like that's your choice.
Well, and they're like 80-year-old white men. So it's funny to be like, look at the Republican Party, these old white guys. And then we're like, we're for Bernie. And I'm like, like 10 years left of life on Earth.
And there's an example. I mean, Bernie has attracted a lot of young people.
Yeah,
for Bernie,
right. Which is funny that like the oldest candidate, but he does. Because he gives somebody like he just kind of empowers the voice of like the working people.
The younger people, those that are just coming out of high school or even in their senior year of high school, he makes them feel that they have that they're concerned about them.
I think the biggest thing with him is his authenticity. Is you can look back at his and I know it's the smear campaign season. Primaries are coming. We got to smear everybody, but when you cut out all the smear, all the noise and stuff, you look back at Bernie's record, he's been saying the same thing, and it's just, that's the other thing too, is kids these days, and I group me into kids these days, we can tell exactly when you are not being authentic. We hate these politicians that do those, roll up your sleeves and, that kind of stuff, we want to hear the passion and the emphasis and the understanding. We want to hear all of that, and we don't want you to be a robot. That's not appealing anymore to anybody.
But here's my question, real quick, is how do we move forward with a society that's so big on cancel culture? Like the guy back in 1973 said, an offensive phrase, let's get rid of him. Moving forward in a social media culture where everybody's posted something that's there forever. How do we get past that? So now you have this great up-and-coming person who has to be held to his sins for 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, especially with social media. So it's kind of like a catch-22. How do we get past that, but then still empower people to want to do well?
And add on top of that, too, is the problem with social media, too, is people pick and choose what they want to highlight without, giving the full story or possibly, looking at, just for example, we're talking about Bernie looking at their candidates' mistakes. There's a bunch of people. What I don't understand is Joe Biden has a history of inappropriately touching women. Might not be groping or anything like that. Exactly. Really it's not, he's not going up there and being, inappropriate, right to your face, but you can actively tell that these women are uncomfortable. And we're going to go after Donald Trump for inappropriately touching women. Granted, he's done it on a much higher degree, but you can't, it's that double standard, and even the election of J.B. Pritzker, in my opinion, we're going to give a billionaire with no experience the governorship, Donald Trump, the billionaire with no experience. So we have to be careful what picking and choosing you're going to want to do, because for every action that you pull out against, quote unquote, my candidate, I can pull something else out of your candidate. And we just have to remember too, that times have changed and so has the culture. There's you won't hear people making transgender jokes anymore or calling people quote unquote trannies or anything like that. That's
But why is that?
eliminated.
So you can still make, you can still make fun of a certain culture, but you can't make fun of another. You know what I mean? Like comedians are getting roasted for
as
that.
Samantha's talking, I find it interesting. So in law, unless it's a habit, it's not admissible into trial. So if someone had something in the past that they did bad, it's not admissible unless you can show that's the habit of the person. Whereas
Everybody makes mistakes.
in life and politics, and I think if you like a candidate, like Samantha says, people are not perfect. So if someone makes a mistake, or maybe two, maybe the people will vote for that person.
Yeah.
If it's a habit, if it's part of their core, then I can see why they would really want to consider it. I mean, it's something that needs to be really considered. If it's just a one-time thing, we can skip it. It's
well, and I don't think we have anything to worry about that they're going to find on you because you've already ran twice. So if there was anything out there, right? So that's good though. It's good to have people with good morals too.
I'm not aware of anything, but it'll be interesting to see what's made up.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But making things up and then finding really crazy stuff is a whole nother thing.
Right.
So you've been practicing since 1991.
Right. I actually went to law school. I was a computer geek and went to law school at night and graduated and then started practicing law on my own. It's something I really loved. I mean, I'm very happy I became a lawyer. Not everyone is happy they're a lawyer. Yeah.
Well, it's a tough job. And not everybody's going to find the same success in being a lawyer either.
Right. Well, I enjoy helping people. It's one of the things I think my parents raised me with, that core value of helping people, making life better for them while I'm on this earth. So I enjoy it.
And you do mostly general civil practice as well. You're not, So do you want to explain, kind of, go into what you do as a civil practice lawyer?
Well, as a general lawyer, and as I say to people, I represent individuals and small businesses. Some of the areas I practice in is civil rights. I was just appointed by a federal judge to represent a prisoner in his civil rights claim, which we settled. I volunteer to help prisoners in their civil rights settlement cases. I do divorce, bankruptcy, and employment discrimination is one of the areas I focus in. But the office does mostly everything. I've done a few criminal cases, criminal defense, just a few. So I would not be an expert in criminal cases.
You've done some immigration, all that stuff too.
Right. So we do immigration now, representing people, because there's a lot of scared people now.
In our business, it's huge. I mean, I'd say 90% of non-union workers are undocumented, and they're horrified to come out now, and they're kind of going even deeper underground. So they definitely need representation.
Right, and there's and so we're dealing with people that should be here, that have gone through the whole process to be here legally, but they're still in the system. And it's a very slow system. So it's not like you can get a decision in a few months. It's taking a couple of years for a judge to say, okay, you can stay here.
And that's a lot of money.
Well, and that's a good thing you point out too, because everyone's talking point is like, just become legal. Well, it's not that simple.
Yeah.
And you're, hearing it first as someone who deals with it. It's not just like, oh yeah, I'm going to go do it. And $200 now I'm a citizen. It's expensive and it's a long process.
Right, and there's just the fear that once you start doing it, you're going to be attacked. There's going to be discrimination against you. It's going to be harder for you. I mean, what's going on at the border is horrible. They should be able to come in the process, and the kids in the cages. I mean, those have impacted me a lot.
Yeah,
it's like we're running concentration camps, or like the Japanese American concentration camps again, but at the border. It's just but it's worse.
Right.
They're in actual cages.
And once you start hating one group, you open it up for people to hate all the groups. I mean, there's always some group that's going to hate another group, and that's not the kind of life I want people to live.
Well, I was talking about this a little bit with you guys before. I teach a labor history class with all of our union apprentices and journeymen too, and we just gave one yesterday, and I emphasize it every time. I mean, this is legitimately human history, has been from slaves on building pyramids to the Roman Empire to America. Like, we owned people. I mean, it's like this constant fight of Black and brown people and this constant fear I mean, it's been around since the start of time, and it's just crazy how we try to get everyone past it. Like, you know,
there's so much implicit bias in the justice system as well, where, you know, you might think, you know, I am the most respectful person, you know, whatever, but you might look at somebody's name even, and if their name it reads as a person of color's name, you know, you might automatically just in your brain not be in favor of that, or what, I don't know what the situation is, but there's still, especially in our law enforcement and stuff like that, you know, luckily in DuPage County, I don't see a lot of, we don't make the news.
Well,
with
you know
that
what
kind
I
of
see in
stuff,
DuPage
but-
County, and I always talk about this, opioids. What's opioids? It's heroin.
I remember.
So like, but on the south side, it's crack, it's heroin.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
In
you
the-
see a different.
Yeah,
In the white neighborhoods, it's like
I
opioid
remember.
addiction. It's like, what the heck is opioid? I mean, it's just the same thing, but in the rougher neighborhoods in Chicago, it's this, and in DuPage, it's like, oh, we have an opioid
Yeah.
crisis.
So I remember hearing about the kids from New Trier when I was in middle school doing opioids. So we're talking 2001 too. So this has been a problem, a known problem, so much so that it got from Naperville all the way to Northlake.
Yeah.
And the New Trier kids in Naperville had their hands on heroin and opioids and stuff like that. So this has been about 20 years now that I've known that this is a problem in DuPage County.
And it's everywhere. I mean,
So I don't know if it's a
Barrington,
term that's
Missouri.
in the statute, and that's why they're starting to use it. Like I've been referring to it as cannabis, and some people tell me I need to be cooler and refer to it as pot or weed, but it's, you know, that's what the statute says is cannabis.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, I just always laugh about how how we talk about it in certain
a racial
areas.
discrepancy.
You know,
it completely is. It's you know, why was crack prosecuted, you know, however many times more than cocaine was, because cocaine was what the white people were doing, and you know, and there's a saying too that, you know, and I say this too, that marijuana or cannabis was never illegal for white people.
You can say marijuana.
Yeah, whatever. Weed was never illegal for white people. You know, I have so many stories of my friends that cops have gone to their house for a different reason and seen marijuana and didn't ticket them or whatever for it. I have people that have gotten pulled over where the cops said, "Get rid of this and never let me catch you again." Whereas if they were someone of a different color, you know, they would be in the back of that police car like that. You know.
Yeah. You know what? We had an interview with Daniel Epstein running for Illinois Supreme Court, and it was crazy to hear about how the law system works, where, you know, a lot of disenfranchised people of color, get forced into making these plea deals where they're like, hey, if you don't plead guilty, you're going to get 50 years. So just plead down to 15, 20 years. And it was like, oh, wow, who's not going to take that? They're horrified that they're going to get 50 years. So
well, that's interesting.
On
criminal, your consequences is the best case is not guilty. And the worst case is, you know, life in prison. So there's not a parameter. In civil lawsuits, a lot of times the parties will sue the person that's suing them. So now you're fighting over who's going to pay money, and so you're more willing to negotiate. But when the state's attorney has that huge window of the best the defendant can get is not guilty, puts pressure on them to decide to plead guilty to something that they're not guilty with.
We were just at NAACP Judicial Candidate Forum on Monday, the 20th, and we were doing research for some of the questions, and the state's attorney's office in DuPage County, I believe, gets $11 million a year, whereas the public defender's office only gets $4 million. So, and the public defenders have these huge caseloads on them. Sometimes they only get 10 minutes to look at the case, and that's introduce themselves, look at the case, you know, get prepared and go into court. You know, and it's just absolutely insane. Whereas the state's office gets, you know, however long they want to get, so long as it's within a reasonable amount of time, which is also, court cases take years now to get in front of court instead of, you know.
Even the staff, the state's attorney has 150 staff members, the public defender has 40 staff members, and the state's attorney can pick and choose which cases they want to prosecute, which is going to go to court. The public defender doesn't have that choice. They have to take every case they're assigned to, and, you know, zealously represent them. Yeah. So it's a different world depending on which side and how much money you have. It's sad that money plays into
money plays in
everything.
everything. I mean, it really does. I mean, and now it's in politics. It's in your. I mean, it just controls everything. And then they pick and choose where they're going to place that money. You know what I mean? Like,
well, we can't let it control everything, though. You're right.
Yeah.
It can.
Well, a lot of it, like they took unions out of college or out of high schools. They took away all those opportunities for people to get into that. And it actually was started in those, those African American and Latino neighborhoods where they started taking out those high schools, so they didn't know about it. And then now it's kind of been moving in everywhere where it's like they don't want you to know, hey, you can go to work, you can make money, factories are gone.
Well, that has to do with how I also think that Illinois kind of has a weird system of how they fund schools. I just think, well, maybe this country does too, ever since No Child Left Behind, where they're giving weird amounts of funding depending on test scores and stuff like that, where you should really be investing the most money into the kids that need it most. You
would think.
New Trier can pay for itself with their taxpayers,
Naperville.
Exactly.
North Schools, Barrington, all that.
Exactly. So why aren't we helping out CPS more? Why aren't we giving them the options to get out of these,
I'd imagine
out
it's
of
by
that
design.
life? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real. I mean, they know what's up. And a lot of it is political, and a lot of it is, I see it every day in the city. I mean, these aldermen, they sell out too. They sell out their own people. It's plain and simple. So there's just not a lot of people trying to help. And the big money gets to even the politicians that are like, I'm going to do this and that and this. And it's like, okay, here's a check. Oh, you know what? Never mind.
But then the corporations buy them out or whoever else, and it's just like,
But we allow campaigns to, have a lot of money and spend a lot of money. And so
and have a lot of time to spend a lot of money.
Right. And that eliminates a lot of good candidates that probably don't have the money.
Well, and you see it, in DuPage, you see it in the judge races. There's a huge difference in what this one side's raising to what this side's raising.
As one candidate for the Republican Party gave himself $249,000 to run for judge.
And I'm just going to say this because Jeff can't donate at Jeff Jacobson for the number judge.com.
That's a good plug. So I got to ask this question because I know Roz will be mad if I don't. So tell us a little bit about Second City before we go back into your judge race. And we do have a question from Cynthia Borbus we're going to get to. But tell us quickly of the Second City. That's a really
So I was one of the people that was probably bored when working. So I joined Second City, and they had a program. It was the bottom level of Second City, and so we'd rehearse.
So what kind of drove you to that? Was it kind of almost like improv, like helping kind of like the speaking and kind of engaging, or was it just something you had a passion for?
So I'm not actually sure why. It's been a long time why I decided to go to Second City. I enjoy comedy, intellectual comedy.
Yeah.
And so I enjoyed Second City because it was intellectual comedy. There was no nasty comments you were allowed to make. You do learn a lot. And I had to make a decision at one point whether I wanted to keep my career as a computer programmer or go into comedy.
You could have been the next George Carlin.
I doubt it. But it's, it didn't make very well. You didn't get paid very well. You really had to pay your dues. Although I find as a lawyer, Second City, a lot of the skills you learned were incredible. One of the big skills of Second City is listening. You need to listen, and then you learn to listen while you're talking. There's some exercises we do. And so when you're doing trial, the other side's objecting, your client's like talking nonstop at your ear, and you're trying to listen to what's going on. So it's a really good skill. I enjoyed Second City, made a lot of friends. It was fun. And if it, paid more and helped more people out, I probably.
Do you have any go-to comedians that you like now?
I don't. I go back.
I could name you a list. John Mulaney is the guy right now. He is the best.
So there's someone. One of my kids got me hooked on that, and I can't think of the name. What's that?
I said Eddie Izzard, classic British comedian.
Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of time to watch. I haven't been back to a Second City show, I want to say, in years. I just don't have time, and now campaigning. But no, can't give a recommendation on a comedian. Now find what you like.
Yeah.
And if it's intellectual, you'll actually find out not only are you laughing, having a great time, you're going to learn something.
Well, any good comedian really has like social awareness, and that's brought to.
I watch comedy all the time because I feel like I am so socially awkward, and sometimes I watch them to mimic the behavier and how they deliver, how they tell a story. And you can pick up on that.
Well, I saw Jay Leno at Harper College, and he was just starting out, and the fire alarm went off. and he just rolled with it. He had jokes about it, and he had no preparation. It was all intellectual humor and stuff. And
I don't think any of that stuff hurts. Toastmasters, anything that gets you talking and quick wit
MCA,
is
hosting,
huge,
yeah,
and especially in
definitely.
politics. So let's take a quick question here. So,
all right, so
Cynthia
we
Borges
satisfied
says,
Raza with that?
I think Rouse will be
Are
happy.
you
We'll see.
satisfied,
I'm
Rosa?
sure I'll get a text in a little bit. So, what message do we need to get to voters for them to realize the importance of the judiciary in voting for judges? That's a good question. I mean, why? What? Judges aren't a sexy race, right? I mean, nothing's really. It's all about the state. It's all about.
I disagree with that.
Well, I'm not
So-
saying you're not sexy, Jeff.
Well,
but
no,
I'm
no,
just,
I clearly I'm not. But
I can't whistle.
I think people have started to understand with the Kavanaugh and what the Republicans are doing with the judicial system that judges are very important. When I ran in 2002, people would say to me, well, unless I'm going to murder someone or get divorced, I don't care about judges. But Roe versus Wade started in a judge's courtroom. A lot of issues, even the union has dealt with issues.
Gay marriage.
It's all in a courtroom. It's all decided by judges. So people have now realized that the judicial race is critical. Especially in DuPage, as I said, if we can get 4 Democratic judges in, that's going to change the whole tone of the circuit courts.
And the selection of because so many associate judges, I don't know if people know this, but in the circuit court, you're dealing with mostly civil cases, right? I would say there's the misdemeanor court and then there's traffic court. But then you have
there's
divorce.
felony.
Yeah, felony. Okay, so but you have divorce and all these other employments and all these other courts too. And some of these courts are being run by former attorneys that have no experience in the court that they're sitting in right now. So if there might be a judge in the family law division that has never been a civil lawyer before. He worked at the state's attorney's office or something like that. So that's not his or her main, source of what they were doing. And Jeff's position is most likely going to be in a civil court, we're hoping, and that's, what he's very versed at. So.
Right. I mean, I'm being told there's a lot of people involved in the court system. There was recently appointed a judge who's been practicing, I think, 9 years and has never been in a courtroom, has never tried a case.
And he's running for judge.
He's not running. He is a judge.
Oh, he's a
he
judge.
was
Oh,
appointed by
Never stood in court before.
the judges. And so that's someone that's going to be deciding cases and creating laws. So, unique candidates that are going to be fair, but understand how the system works.
You would think there'd be a sense of higher morality if you're kind of running the law of the land as judges kind of do in a lot of cases. You would think you want more experience, but that's where these people win, and then they just appoint their friends or family.
You scratched my back 3 years ago, now I'm going to scratch your back, or whatever it is.
And that's a dangerous thing to be in these positions as judges. I mean, politics is a shady business, but with judges, it's like
you're supposed to be.
You should be a little bit more of a higher standard on that.
Right. I mean, it's like any profession. Even though a judge is going to be fair and keep to the law, if they don't know the procedures, if they don't know the rules of evidence, if they don't know how things should be done, it just creates havoc in the courtroom. It's and that's where I think the issue. I mean. Anyone could eventually learn something, but if you need a judge that knows what they're doing, experience, like the unions spend 4 years teaching someone, to be a union member. It's to go on the bench with never being in a courtroom and making decisions, may be a problem.
And that's what
I've never been before that judge, so I don't know whether he's doing an incredible job or not, but I think
it's something to consider. It's definitely, as a voter, something I would want to know about.
Training matters. Experience matters. I mean, this is what we fight every day as union members. You have our trained, skilled members that put blood, sweat, and tears and years and years and hours of practice, and they're losing a job to this guy who's like,
he's getting paid, he'll take way less pay.
I'll do that for $15. And do you have any experience? No. Okay,
and then
great.
They
Just
leave
don't do
in
it.
3 months because they don't like the job or whatever.
Right.
So, training matters, experience matters.
We do a lot of litigation over construction. When you have a guy that's got great material, looks like he knows what he's doing, starts doing work, and nothing's in a workmanship like manner, and we end up having to sue because it's costing my clients a lot of money. So knowing what you're doing is huge. I mean, just because you know to go to Home Depot and get wood and materials doesn't mean you know how to put it together.
Yeah.
Great metaphor.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Just because you can work on your basement doing a little something doesn't
Right.
mean you can work
Yeah,
on a high
building
rise and
house.
building a house.
You are
and
not
building a
Jimmy
store.
Carter, all right? He can
Yeah,
build a
exactly.
house.
He's doing great.
Right, but he's been doing it a long time.
I know.
Very
He's very
experienced.
skilled. I'd let him build me a house. Anyway,
Exactly.
sorry.
No, so moving forward, we got about 5 minutes left. So where can people find you? What are you out there doing? How are we going to get younger people to find and make sure they vote all the way down the ballot? And don't forget about these judge positions.
So I'll just address quickly down the ballot. So judges for the primary are going to be towards the bottom on the back. So if they pick out a paper ballot, they need to flip it, go all the way to the back. But this year, the Democrats have every position filled except for one. So there'll be a lot of choices in the judicial race. They'll have a lot of options. There's, as I said, 6 people. The young people, we're going out and we're talking to them. We're listening to them. We're trying to figure out what it is they want. And I think listening is key to it. I was just at the NAACP, I was doing a little research on Martin Luther King Jr., and I realized he was a great listener. They said, I read an article, I don't know whether it's true or not, I read it online, but they said that I have
Generation Zer to help you.
Right, I have a dream was because someone behind him had said, tell him about the dream. It wasn't in his speech, he wasn't planning to talk about it, and he listened to her and thought, that's a good idea, I will. And that's where supposedly I have a dream. So I think listening to the younger people, listening to all the voters will play a key in this race. I can't believe it's been an hour.
Yeah. It goes quick, right?
It does
I
with
know.
you.
Yeah, I know. So then what do you have, Samantha, kind of working, like you were saying with COD, you got some stuff trying to...
So yeah, I'm going to be popping in and out of COD all this election year, and I'm going to try and make it more, I just kind of want to be a figure around College of DuPage, because especially if somebody's going to community college, they generally stay in the state for the rest of their degree, or they stop at community college. So you know that they're going to be at least in the state, if not staying in DuPage County. So College of DuPage is an excellent resource, and any of the community colleges around this area are an excellent resource to start engaging with kids and going in and talking to their various political science classes, stuff like that. Another big thing is social media, especially from the Democratic Party of DuPage County itself, making sure that they are putting out advertisements on Facebook and Twitter that say, make sure you're going all the way down, and they got to be more memey and more
people when to
graphics.
vote.
Yeah,
March
exactly.
17th, come out and vote.
And just, they have to get more into social media, putting out Google ads on, websites and stuff like that for the Democratic Party. We just have to be there more on the internet, because there's so many people that are meeting each other and talking to each other on the internet more than they are face to face.
Should they be on TikTok?
Okay.
Should I be on TikTok?
I am saying,
think I'm
if
too old
you
for
have
that.
a funny sense of, did you like Vine? Were you here for Vine or no?
No.
Anyway, they're short movies, and they're just, if they're either with it or not. They're either funny or they're not. But the funny ones, I cry laughing.
Yeah.
These kids are so funny with they have such dry, witty humor. So yes, check out TikTok. This has been an advertisement for TikTok.
But if you want to join our campaign, you're welcome to contact us. And if you know how to use TikTok,
Do you want to put out how they can contact you? You can throw an
Sure.
email or...
So
Facebook.
I know all this stuff better than Jeff. So you can find out more about Jeff's campaign at Jeff Jacobson 4 Judge, the number 4. You can email me or Jeff at Jacobson 4, the word 4 Judge, FOR, at gmail.com. That's Jacobson 4 FOR Judge at gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter, Jacobson for Judge, and we're also on Facebook, Jeff Jacobson for DuPage Judge on Facebook. And go ahead and give us a like, give us some insights if you're a 17-year-old listening to this, and you can offer us some help in the social media range, what you want to see or what you feel like you need from your local politics.
Right, we're looking for anyone from 15 to 110.
Yeah.
That's it. Perfect. And from anyone from 15 to 110, tune into Life Loving the Grind every
Yes.
Saturday, 1 to 2 p.m. So shout out to Raza and Sarah too. I hope
Yes.
Raza's spoiling Sarah. And my thoughts and prayers do go to the family. It was a double homicide. I
Got it.
got a double homicide in Lyle.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
you know.
So tragic.
But yeah, thanks for tuning in, Jeff, Samantha. Good
Thank
luck with
you.
everything. Don't forget everyone to vote.
Yeah.
For sure.
March 17th.
And thanks to my Sarah Vanna White over there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
You good?